it becomes like, oh, just something we do all the time. But then a lot of the times we can say, okay, today we're checking, show me your screen, tell me one thing you learned. And then as a teacher, I can kind of gauge easily. So in sixth grade, I know we do it right away. In seventh grade, they do it when they come back from their lunch. So they kind of use it as go to your device and kind of wrap up what you're doing and then go ahead and jump on Palo. I think it's fantastic how it's easy for the kids to log in. It's easier for them to be self-paced. It's not very long. And I think that keeps them motivated because we use the iReady program and they're supposed to be on the computer for 25 minutes. So they have the 15-minute Palo, a little small break to have a conversation, and then they transition over into their more workload. But holistically, it's just you save your password in Chrome and it's easy. So the logging in process was easy. And then the questions that follow up, I would take some of the questions from the weekly digest emails we would get. And so I would know, oh, we're talking about self-image. Oh, we're talking about honesty, whatever we're talking about. I would kind of just randomly come up with a question. Hey, you talk about this today. Tell me about that. Sometimes I'd ask the kids what they wrote about. And then sometimes that would be a lot for me, but generally just something that was really quick. So I know that they did it, something that they couldn't be like, oh yeah, I did this. And it wasn't something that was the same. I think from start to finish, the beginning of the year, it took maybe 20 minutes to go through a lesson. But towards the end of the year, maybe 10 max. Like they go through it almost faster than I want them to.
I think it will work for any school district as long as people get a buy-in and they have a time allotted to it and they get the students to work on it. I think it will work for any district.
I think that we've used several different ones, and in my experiences out of the district, I've used different ones even past that. But I really liked it because it was a standalone program that I didn't have to plan, but I could always use it as a supplement. And so I think if, like, I'm pretty lucky, I only have about 25 in a class, but even if I had 40 in a class, I don't have to really do anything. It's all very self-sufficient, but our counselor still gets all of the information. So the SEL part of it is still very consistent and we're using it with fidelity. So I think, like Ebby said, as long as we have that allotted time, it's great. And I think her choosing that 4-day model for us was even better because our Fridays are just so crazy. We have fun this and assembly that, and it would be almost a waste to have that extra lesson. But generally speaking, I think it'd be great for rural communities or more urban communities. Obviously, you want a higher teacher to student ratio, but I think it could work no matter what because you could give a lot into it, or you could just kind of spit it out there and watch it just kind of do its thing.
Again, that's, I would say, because this is the first year of us using it. I think for the first year, it's asking a lot to expect to say, okay, well, how we deal with the conflict, how the language helps and all that. I think more practice really is what our teachers will need to help the children understand and change their language that in the school. So that I would say, yeah, we just need more practice on that. But I know it has helped with even sometimes when I meet with students in my office, I ask them, you know, when I do mediation, sometimes I ask about what they learned on Palo. You know, I mention that to see what they can give me, you know, from what they did and how we can use that in the situation we're dealing with, you know. So there was some of that. So it did, I would say, I mean, students were engaged enough to remember stuff and say, hey, yeah, we did this on Palo. I mean,
so many different kinds already that just using specific language is hard. But the topics, I think, were critical. Like I could be like, were you very honest? And they're like, yeah, we read about that. Well, tell me about that. And so the topics remained just like the focus, but the language is different. And even in my hallway, we have like the big thermometer in our hallway that kids would go up and touch and show us. There's still one, I think, by our classroom doors. And so things like that are the same.
I found the dashboard quite useful actually, because especially being able to go in and see what students have said. The best part is that I kind of before even I bring them in, I have an idea how they're thinking, you know, because I've read what they have there. So it helps with the conversation, you know. it helps to start a conversation
Mhm.
on exactly where I think, to take the conversation where I think it needs to go, So it kind of gives me a leg up into the
Mm.
conversation we're going to have.
I didn't have access to the dashboard all year, and I haven't used it much in the later part. But there was one time Miss I stopped me in the hallway. She said such and such typed in gibberish in their thing today, and I was like, oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But that particular student had also cheated on one of my tests the day before, so I was kind of like, maybe we should check. And so I went and checked on this kid, and I found out that his sister that he's living with had this big problem, and he was just not having a whole thing. But it was because the Palo, and it wasn't even what he wrote, it was that he didn't write anything. He just gibberish. And Miss I let me know that. I pulled him and we just had a conversation. And it was gonna be like, oh, you're in trouble. But when I started to talk to him about it, it wasn't that he was just
Mm.
neglecting. He was just over it and he didn't want to do anything that day. And so then I got to open the door of conversation. And so I'm not a counselor, but it was because Miss I read his lack of response to make me know that's not how that kid usually acts. And then I could go back and triage with him. And I think ultimately he did go to see Miss I that afternoon. So that's a kind of a cool example.
Yeah.
Our building level, we are 3 administrators. 2 of them work more with middle school than the other. And it was one of those things where if we don't hear a lot about it, they enjoy it. And we get like random notes, hey, make sure Palo is happening. There might be something in our staff newsletter, but our administration are very hands off and let us do what we need to do unless they are telling us something. And I think because they haven't said anything and they're seeing things, it's positive. If they didn't like it, we would hear more about it than if they did like it. But I do think the like overall consensus from administration is positive, including from a district, especially from
And I
me.
re-
I'm one of the biggest. I think it's great.
Yes, Mr. Hoffman has been a real Palo champion for me.